Some objects, they're not just things. They're not just wood or stone or cloth. They carry this weight, this history with them. And today we're prying open the vaults and cracking the display cases on some of history's most terrifying artifacts. All right, let's get into it. I mean, it sounds kind of weird, right? But this question is at the very heart of everything we're about to dig into. Just think about it for a second. Can a thing, a hunk of wood, a shiny rock, a kid's toy, actually hold a grudge? Can it feel malice? Okay, so maybe that first question sounds a little out there, but what about this one? This is a detail that kind of shoves us out of the what-if zone and straight into something deeply unsettling. Well, according to the legends we're about to explore, the answer is a big, resounding yes. These stories don't just hint at it, they basically scream that this stuff is absolutely real. All right, let's open our first case file. We're talking about objects that, well, they don't seem to be just objects. It's like they're occupied. They're vessels for spirits who just couldn't or wouldn't let go of their stuff. So first up, we have these. Bell courts, salt thrones. And yeah, they look fancy, but these aren't just any old priceless antiques. They were made for French royalty. And the story goes, the spirits of those royals are still hanging out in them. And trust me, they really, really do not like being disturbed. And get this, their reports are just wild. We're not talking about a chilly feeling here. People claim they've been violently shoved or even bucked right out of the chairs by nothing. Staff members talk about getting these painful shocks like a jolt of electricity just for being nearby. This isn't just a spooky vibe. It's like a physical assault from a chair. Okay, so we go from aggressive furniture to something just heartbreaking. This is the Okiku Doll. It was bought back in 1918 for a little 2-year-old girl named Kikuko, but just a year later, she tragically died from influenza. Her family, heartbroken, kept the doll to remember her. They believed her little spirit had found a home inside it. And that's when they started to notice something. Well, something impossible. And this is where the story gets really, really strange. You can see it on the timeline here. The doll's hair was cut short to her jawline, but then it started to grow. First to her shoulders, then down to her waist. Today, the doll is actually housed in a temple where monks have to regularly trim its hair when it gets down to its knees. But here's the kicker, the part that gives me chills. Scientists actually got a sample of the hair to examine. And you know what they found? It was real, actual human hair. So we've seen spirits attached to objects. But what about an object that attaches itself to you? That's our next case file. It's a curse that you just can't shake, and believe me, the results are devastating. Yeah, this one isn't your typical ghost story. It's the story of a curse that just would not let go. The Delhi Purple Sapphire, which, fun fact, is actually an amethyst, brought nothing but misery to anyone who owned it. Just look at this poor guy, Edward Heron Allen. He tried everything to get rid of this thing. He gave it to his friends. They had horrible disasters and gave it right back. He literally chucked it into a canal, and 3 months later, a jeweler brings it back to him. The gem just refused to be lost. And this is the warning letter he left with it when he finally sealed it away. You can just feel the sheer terror in his words. He's begging whoever finds it to cast it into the sea. I mean, think about that. That's the most final thing you can do, right? For an object that just refuses to leave you alone. Okay, so as unsettling as all that is, we're about to take things to a whole new level. The stories we've heard so far are one thing. The next ones, they aren't just about bad luck or creepy vibes. They are about death, period. Welcome to case file number 3, a legacy of death. The objects we're looking at now, they're connected to something so much darker. We're talking about wiping out entire families. Not just one person, but the whole bloodline. So, let me introduce you to the woman from Lim. This thing is ancient. We're talking 5,000 years old. Archaeologists think it was some kind of ritual idol, something for the dead, which means it was never, ever meant to be owned by the living. And well, the families that brought it into their homes found that out in the most horrific way imaginable. Just look at this. The pattern is absolutely brutal. The first owner, Lord Elfont, his entire family of 7, dead within 6 years. Then the Minucci family, gone in 4 years. The Thompson-Knoll family, same thing, wiped out in 4 years. And then Sir Alan Biverbrooke's family. He, his wife, and his 2 daughters all died.
It was his 2 surviving sons who finally figured it out and got rid of it by donating it to a museum. Beware, this face brings death. 4 words, that's it. That was the note they found tucked inside our next object, the Basano Vase, when someone dug it up in 1988. A super clear warning from centuries ago that was completely ignored. So the legend goes this 15th century silver vase belonged to a bride who was murdered on her wedding night, and with her last breath, she cursed it. Fast forward to 1988. The vase is found, people see the note, and they're like, nah, it's just an old scary story. Big mistake. The curse was anything but folklore. In that 1 year, 1988 alone, it killed 4 different people who owned it, one right after the other, before it vanished again. This next story, it's just born from pure horrific cruelty. It's called the Cooley chest. The man who built it, an enslaved craftsman named Hosea, was beaten to death by the plantation owner, Jacob Cooley. So in retaliation, the other enslaved people, they couldn't go to the law, right? They knew that would be useless. So they had the chest cursed. And that curse found its mark immediately. The very first victim was Cooley's own baby son. 17. Just let that number sink in. 17. That's the minimum number of people in the Cooley family line who died because of this one wooden chest. A curse that echoed for more than 100 years. And that leads us to our final and maybe most famous case file. We're talking about an object so deadly, so notorious, that they had to come up with a pretty creative and permanent solution to stop it. Okay, so get a load of how this all started. The whole thing kicked off because a guy sat in his son-in-law's favorite chair. That's it. That was the crime. And for that, the son-in-law, a guy named Thomas Busby, murdered him. Then, as they were taking Busby to be executed, he supposedly screamed out a curse. May sudden death come to anyone who dares sit in my chair. And how many people did that curse take? Over 60. Yeah, 60 plus. We're talking soldiers during World War II who didn't know the story, a delivery guy who plopped down on it for a laugh and then died in a car wreck that same day. The chair's reputation went from local legend to terrifyingly real. So what do you do with a killer chair? This is the wild solution they came up with. The Thirsk Museum, where it is now, didn't just rope it off. No way. They took the threat so seriously that they literally hung it 5 feet up in the air on a wall. It's bolted there so no one can ever accidentally sit in it again. So, after all of that, where does that leave us? Are these just really effective cautionary tales, stories to warn us about being greedy or cruel? Or is something else going on? Could an object actually become so soaked in tragedy, so full of malice, that it's better to just leave it untouched? I don't have the answer. That's something you'll have to decide for yourself.